Hey loves, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Faith, and today guys I'll be checking out It's Not Working. Piers Morgan slams woke censoring of children books. And you guys, I'm super excited as always. If you're here to subscribe to this channel, please consider subscribing, give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And without much ado, let's see what Piers Morgan has for us in this video.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored, live from London. Sounds very difficult to be young in today's world. Barely a day passes without stories of profound woe amongst our youth. Kids' mental health is in crisis, we're told. Anxiety and depression rampant among children. There's even a child anxiety epidemic right here in the UK, apparently.
Wow.
All sounds very alarming. It's also a bit confusing because, generally speaking, the world is getting more prosperous, less poor, safer, there are fewer wars, people are living longer and healthier. It should be that young people feel quite happy, actually. Now we've come through the pandemic, they should be, but they're not. And social media probably has a lot to do with that. An entire digital world of vipers exists where self-esteem can be measured directly in likes. Even I would worry about that if I wasn't, well, so well liked. But perhaps there's a bigger problem here, and it's us. We ghastly adults who at some point decided we should teach children to be mortally offended by everyone and utterly terrified of everything, and that they could win at everything and never lose. Fresh from ransacking Roald Dahl's legendary children's stories, so-called sensitivity readers, God, that phrase just fills my skin with horror, doesn't it yours? They make you just literally sensitivity readers. I've now said about cancelling, you guessed it, this.
Come on, Plum! Throw the ball! I got it! I got it! Oh, Spotty! What are you doing in my pea soup?
I used to love the Bass Street Kids and the Beano. Those mischievous little rogues in Britain's best-loved comic book. They were always problematic, it's why I like them. I like them being problematic. They've entertained children for 67 years without complaint. You know what? Kids can be problematic. I've had 4 of them. The consultants from Inclusive Minds, the very same people who censored Roald Dahl's books, have quietly decided there needs to be some changes. Of course they do. The Beano now takes professional advice from this committee of Fun Police, which has helped to rebrand its characters and vet its back catalogue. Spotty, who was called Spotty because he's spotty, is now known as Scotty. He's still got spots, you just can't say it. And Fatty, who was called Fatty because he's a fatty, is now known as Freddy, even though he's still fat. We just can't call him that. The kids have been joined by 5 new pupils, including Harsha, Mihira and Mandira, in order to be more inclusive. Mandira is featured in storylines about mental health to apparently highlight the anxieties facing children. Perhaps they should do one about Mandira being warned that her friend Fatty is offensive. This is from the same set of geniuses who changed cloud men to cloud people in James and the Giant Peach and decided that black tractors in Fantastic Mr. Fox could not be described as black because it was potentially racist to other tractors, presumably.
Can you imagine?
Now, there are 2 points here. The first is about censorship. If we continue to rewrite every work of fiction based on today's sensibilities, you're going to have to keep doing it every 10 years until you're left with a sanitized slab of nonsense that bears zero resemblance to the original. The context of when something was written is part of what makes it informative and interesting. The second point is this. We heard a hell of a lot less about child anxiety when Fatty and Spotty were on the loose because they were considered to be funny then. It was a joke. It's a cartoon. If we genuinely want our kids to feel happier and less anxious, maybe we should stop teaching them constantly that the entire world is out to get them. Show them how to be less offended by absolutely everything. Stop allowing them to all get a prize in everything they compete in at school, so they all think that they're winners when sometimes they're not. Because none of that is a proper preparation for the real world. The one that in Barbie Land is such a shock to Margot Robbie when she gets to it. The real world, I'm afraid, is warts and all. It can be tough out there. So why don't we prepare kids for how to handle it rather than cover them in cotton wool? Well, I'm joined now by broadcaster and former Brexit MEP Alex Phillips, Talk TV contributor and lawyer Paula Rowan Adrian, and political journalist Ava Santina. All right. Alex, I brought up 4 kids. I'm not perfect by any means. I mean, nearly perfect as a father, probably. But this sanitizing of everything, this overprotection, this wrapping in cotton wool, this nobody can lose, nobody can be called any funny names in cartoons, blah, blah, blah. It's exhausting. And B, all it seems to be doing is increasing the amount of anxiety in kids.
Exactly.
All the figures show the situation's getting worse, not better. I would argue this strategy hasn't worked. It's had the opposite effect.
Yeah, it's utter madness. I mean, what we seem to be doing as a society now is making our kids into little hypochondriacs to worry about everything, to police their own language at the time they should be learning how to develop their communication skills, to see everything through the prism of race, to see everything through the prism of gender. And then at the same time, the things perhaps we should protect them from, adult fetish, pornography, we're foisting upon them at an alarming rate. And I don't understand what children are supposed to be anymore. Are they supposed to engage with this adult world of critical race theory and extreme adult content?
100 genders.
There is no more innocence. Safeguarding has gone out the window.
All right, Paula, we've discussed a lot of these issues, all right? And I get that some kids are anxious. I've met quite a few kids who have a lot of anxiety problems. I think a lot of it is social media driven. I think a lot of it is dopamine driven, that they're exposed through social media to a constant barrage of imagery from wars and other things which we simply would never have seen when I was a kid. So I think that cannot be overlooked, this constant sensory overload impacting negatively. And yet all the statistics will show young people, if they're calmly explained, there's never been a better time to be alive, actually.
But the statistics will also tell you, Piers, about the suicide rate amongst children, about how their mental health is suffering, about how children are being bullied, both personally and online in the social world, social media world. And so when we look at the Beano, what surprised me about this story is that we weren't applauding what the Beano were doing. We weren't saying, we weren't championing what they were doing, which is to stop children from calling each other names, because that's not appropriate.
Well, you think it's going to stop because the Beano stops using names? I mean, come on.
But, yes, I do actually, because it's teaching children that it's not appropriate. And you call somebody by their name, which is Frank, John, Paula or Alex. You don't call them Spotty, you don't call them Darky, you don't call them Fatty, you call them by their name. And so what you are doing but what the Beano is doing is acknowledging that it's anachronistic in its style and that it shouldn't be, that it should be taking responsibility for providing a positive message for children. Stop being mean, children.
Yeah, but the trouble is, life is tough, Ava. Life is very mean. I always remind people of the Rocky Balboa speech to his son, who's a spoiled, entitled brat in the 6th movie. And eventually Rocky loses it with him in the street and says, look, life is hard. It will beat you down, right? And the challenge of succeeding in life is how many times you can get back up and keep moving forward. It's not how hard you can punch. It's about how hard you can get punched and keep going. We know this. And my argument is, I think we're just not preparing kids properly for the real world. And trying to create this kind of Barbie-style utopia where no one's mean, no one uses mean words, all that kind of thing, means you basically have to airbrush now every work of literature going back in history, because it was all full of mean stuff.
No, I think you're
it was.
Come on.
From Roald Dahl to the Beano, they're all getting censored.
Right.
But I don't get it. I don't get any of it works.
I think it's quite obvious that parents probably don't want to sit down in 2023 and read a bedtime story to their child about, Fatty and Spotty. I think it's probably market.
I do.
Hang on, I think it's probably market forces that have dictated it, and you love the free market, and I think they've probably looked at it and gone, do you know what, Beano, not really being consumed anymore. Why don't we try to get this, somehow purchased and back in schools, back at bedtime? And this is how they've responded.
But let me throw this back at you. My daughter she's 11, she calls me Fatty all the time, right? And does this to me all the time. Good, it makes me go to the gym. Didn't know this morning.
That's very, very different from reading her
Barbie
bedtime
pressing
story.
this morning to female trainers. I mean, this is how I flow. But the point is, I'm not offended when she does that. I think it's funny, right? It used to be you could laugh at stuff like that. But what we're now in a world where Cosmopolitan magazine, one of the most influential magazines for young women in this country, puts a £305 model on the front cover and doesn't mention anywhere in the text, either on the cover or inside, that this is morbidly obese and very dangerous.
Okay.
We celebrate being incredibly fat. But if you dare to use the word fatty in the Beano about a fictitious character, all hell breaks loose. The sensitivity police get called in. It all has to be changed. Explain to me how that is good for society or good for the well-being of young women who think that being 305 pounds when you're 5'2" is a great thing to be. It's body positive. Because no one's got the gumption to go, sorry, you are morbidly obese, you're going to die. And by the way, if you all want to be this fat, you're all going to die too.
But then we should have done that for the models who were 80 pounds and 6 foot tall, who were on magazines for 20 years and gave, the whole world eating disorders.
I said the same thing about the Size Zero campaign. I said that was wrong too.
There was never any warning on there of how a woman achieved that body frame. No one ever talked about the smoking. No one ever talked about the drug taking or the excessive dieting. None of that ever appeared in a magazine. And Piers, I guarantee your daughter, when she calls you fatty, and you have that lovely little inside joke.
You're not calling fatty.
No, but you have
she's allowed to, you can't.
But when you have a good joke about it and you're having, this nice, lovely moment, I guarantee you didn't teach her that word. That's probably something she's picked up and now you enjoy and you have a nice laugh.
Yeah, but she's
you
picked it
didn't
up.
teach her that.
She's picked it up because actually kids do that kind of thing. They're kids, right? They're not going to stop because the Beanos changes everyone's name.
You taught her that word, wouldn't it? If you were at bedtime and you taught her that word from the Beano book, that would be a bit strange.
I've tried to teach all my kids, just don't worry about... My mother always told me, we talk about the patriarchy. I lived in a matriarchy with these wonderfully strong women in my family, my grandmother, my mother, my sister, my daughter's inheriting the same thing. And it's just that sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. You're very much a, never mind sticks and stones, words are far worse. They're not. They're literally not.
And you know that that's not true.
I do not know it's true.
I think that's a really dangerous theory to push.
No.
We know that words hurt. We know that because our law recognises that fact, that people are often mistreated with words and that it can impact on their lives. We know that bullying, which doesn't have to include physical attacks, when we're talking about a verbal assault on somebody, can often have the same threatening and intimidating effect as it could if you were physically assaulted.
I know, but my point is...
if you say if you say then we need to acknowledge that, because they are viewers watching this who think it's appropriate to stand over a partner and shout abuse at them in their face, or to even whisper it in their ear.
I don't know there's any viewers. Because my viewers are not those sort of people. Absolutely not.
I would hope I'd hope that they're not.
I have a discerning audience.
I'd hope that they're not. But Sadiq Khan recognises that abuse can be verbal as well as...
You're never going to persuade me that verbal mockery and stupid phrases is ever going to come close to physical violence.
Well, maybe Meghan Markle might be able to do that.
Meghan Markle dishes it out like everyone I've ever seen in my life. She thinks it's fine to call the royal family a bunch of horrible racist scumbags and make hundreds of millions of dollars. You never complain when she does that.
But you
only complain if people say how disgusting.
But you say that is not appropriate, and that's exactly the example that I wanted you to give.
No, you're missing my point completely.
It's not appropriate to use language
but you're not going to sanitise the world, Paula. You're not. You're not going to stop people being mean.
We don't have to sanitise the world. We can teach people to be kind.
All right, let's
teach people. Kindness.
What about teaching people to just state the bleeding obvious?
Wow, you guys, that was such an interesting and intense debate right there. And let me know your thoughts on this one. Do you think that sanitizing characters and words in cartoon will make kids to not be mean anymore, or is going to shape the way they view the world, or they're just doing too much and should allow kids to be kids and they should enjoy what other people have enjoyed in the past? This whole woke ideology is becoming too much that even the words that kids are supposed to use are being policed here and there. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I really had fun reacting to this video. If you guys totally enjoyed watching, give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And this is me officially signing out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.